For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise, and you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here. This is The Scribble. Thank you so much for tuning in today. You know, in a world where it seems like there's less and less compassion and understanding for people, I think I'm going to change your mind if you're a skeptic, because I have a story to share with you this week that is, it's very personal, and not many people know exactly what was happening behind the scenes, but it's certainly, I think, enlightening. And, you know, you hear about people sort of being not ignorant, but I guess you could say ignorant in the sense of just being oblivious, like not knowing, not ignorant in the rude sort of way. But, you know, until you know, are affected by cancer, until you know somebody who's died from cancer, right? Like, you can't really appreciate it until it hits you. And so I think some really good human beings can kind of understand, right? Somebody who's, you know, living with AIDS, or somebody who's whatever, emotionally unstable and is suicidal, or somebody who's, you know, who had a miscarriage and, you know, is really grieving. Most people can sort of empathize and feel that compassion towards somebody when they're either telling their story or you're even just listening to it, right? You see, especially during the holidays, all those charity commercials, right? With the sad kids who, you know, have deformed faces, or the dogs that are locked up because they were in dog fighting, you know, or whatever it is. Locked up, not in prison. They're in cages. That's right. The dogs were arrested for dog fighting. You know what I mean, right? So they bank on your emotions, right? That you're going to feel sorry for these people. And I think, from what I understand, a lot of people, though, when they see those charity commercials during the holidays, it's kind of like, you know, now you're just trying to make me, you know, that's a setup. That's an emotional trap. You're trying to make me feel, you know, and that's, you know, I don't like that. And so I'm definitely not going to donate, but it works for a lot of people, right? That's why they do it during the holiday season. So I've got a story to share with you this week that is sort of emotional in a sense, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to either relate or understand where I'm coming from, and then also share your story or your even experience with it. So it's going to be, I think, the entire episode. So stick around. It starts on The Scribble right after this.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate, at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate, at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. Speak Free with JB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
Jeremy Bradley here on The Scribble. So this week I have kind of I guess it's a weird story to share with you. So I have a revelation. I'm dropping a bombshell on the show this week. It's not really. I guess it's not something that I've really talked about with many people. My team here, like our broadcast and our publishing team, knows because they were part of it. But years ago we were going to launch a podcast with a company that does business with the American prison system, right? Now, I'm Canadian, so for me, jail is government, and it's kind of, it's government. It's run by the government. It's not profit. So it's a very different, I was going to say lifestyle. I guess it is a lifestyle if you're going to be in jail for a while. So I didn't know. It wasn't until I started, seeing episodes like of Dateline or 48 Hour, all those kinds of shows, right? And, you hear about people carrying on relationships with people that are locked up, right? You've heard about that, where people get married. It's like they've never been physically touched, but somehow they get married when one of them is locked up, right? So you meet somebody who's behind bars, you fall in love with them, you get married. Meanwhile, you've never physically touched the person. So when I heard about that years ago, I thought it was very bizarre. And I've heard about how you can have a prison pen pal. Back in the day, right? You would write letters back and forth with the person. And it was slow, obviously, but that was just a way to keep in touch. It was a way to communicate. And I didn't realize that there were, it was that show on A&E that I saw where they had tablets and, oh God, what is the name of the show? Somebody tell me the name of the show that I'm talking about. You know, the one where they go behind the scene, like undercover? 60 Days In. Thank you so much, Tim. And so that's where I saw that they have tablets. There's a bank of phones they can use. You can video chat now with people. And so compared to the Canadian system, which doesn't really have, as far as I know, the ability to like email inmates, I don't think that that's a thing in Canada. But in the US, it's a business, right? As I was just saying. So years ago, we were going to team up with a company that provides tablets and communication for the inmates. And we were going to produce a podcast, and we had a bunch of different ideas that were being bounced around. One of them was that we were going to showcase people who were making a difference, people who were, turning their life around. Maybe they had started maybe they started a club, or maybe they were helping to teach people, that were locked up as well to better themselves. And I thought that would be really cool. This was, like I said, years ago when we were winding down our top 40 radio show after like 15 years on the air. So yeah, this is going back about four and a half years, maybe, I guess now. And I thought that would be really fun. You'd feel good because you're helping share this story, and it would be for internal listening, right? So it would be for other inmates to listen to and hopefully be inspired. And so we were like, okay, that's really cool. So what happened was we were set up with some inmates who fell into this category, right? Who the respective jails or prisons would say, okay, this dude, and I'm making up names here, Bob or James or whoever, is, he's running a workshop on creative writing. This one has created, a music group, or maybe a choir. This one is getting his education and is doing and it was really inspiring. It really was. So when they passed along these names, we had the access to then reach out to them and email. Well, it's not really emailing. I guess it's messaging, whatever. But it's for the sake of it's emailing the person. And so it was really kind of cool. Hey, I'm this radio host, this broadcaster. Now, the thing with a lot of these guys is they are used to the Datelines, the 48 Hours, the A&E shows, all these things. So when they hear that you're a journalist, which that's my background. I majored in journalism when I was in school. So when you start off with that introduction, it's kind of like, okay, he's fishing for something, right? He's doing a Dateline story. He's doing something. He's exploiting my life, my case, my whatever. And you have to break down these walls, right? Because it's true, from what I understand, they will get random messages from people who have seen them on Dateline and other platforms. And you can reach out, right? As long as you know their name and where they are, you can search them and send a message. And so we had 4 or 5 of them. I'm trying to think. So we had Clayton, James, 5 of them. Yeah, we had 5. And they one New Jersey, one was Florida, one is Texas, one I can't remember. But anyway, we had 5 people. And so as we were we weren't in production at this point, but we were having the conversations with the company. And it's kind of funny to hear that the prison system is, billion-dollar business, whatever it was. Well, the company was basically going and saying, well, we don't have any money to pay you to produce this kind of a thing. And I was like, first of all, we're not asking for like $100,000 here. We're asking for, a few $1,000s an episode, a couple $1,000s an episode, or, whatever it is, and the assistance with, putting us in touch with people. So they hummed and hawed, and then at the end of the day, they said, yeah, we don't have the money to support this. And I'm sitting here going, I'm sorry, I'm on your platform right now. I can buy these things called stamps for, between, 40 cents or $1, whatever it is, just for the privilege of messaging somebody behind bars. It costs you nothing for me to do this. So I'm buying a imaginary product, right? It's not like when you're buying a stamp at the post office that's physically going on a piece of paper, it's being mailed. That would be like you having to pay every time you emailed somebody, right? Every time you emailed your friend or your grandma or whatever it was, you're going to have to pay somebody, Hotmail, Google, whatever it is, you have to pay them 40 cents or $1 for every email you send. So I'm sorry, company that says we don't have money. Think about how many families are, and you can have video calls and you pay to have like a 15-minute video session. Think of things like, do you remember back in, or maybe they still have it now, where you could basically pay to watch somebody, get naked on camera, and you have like 5 minutes, and you can buy time. Is that still a thing, or am I just that old? I remember that back in the day, because this is back when I was, a horny 20-year-old or whatever it was. You could basically get like a private, now I'm getting off track here, but you could buy like, 4 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever of like a video chat with somebody and basically tell them what to do, right? And they get naked. And it's funny because I did this a few times back in the day before I married a hot fucking Brazilian. All right, back off. But it was funny because I remember thinking I want as much, skin time as possible from this person. I was just watching them. They could not see me, right? Like this was more just like a peep show kind of a thing. So it's not like I was getting naked on camera. I didn't have a camera. I was just watching. But you'd have them trying to make chit chat. I'm sitting there going, okay, let's cut to the chase. Like I'm paying for 4 minutes. And if I was in their situation, I'd be doing the same thing, right? I'd be stalling because you're trying to get more time and more money out of them. So anyway, this prison thing has, you paid video chats, paid phone calls, paid messaging, but they don't have money to pay for, a little bit of a podcast. So it fell through. We actually didn't get it off the ground. Nothing came of it. But because this had drawn out for a few weeks, I wasn't just going to like disappear on these guys, right? We're kind of forming, I hesitate to use the word relationship, but we essentially were forming a relationship, building a trust, because, if I was wanting them to open up to me, right, they've got to feel that I'm not some just, person who's going to exploit them. And I did have some credibility on my side because they were told internally by whoever, guard share, I don't know whoever runs, where they are, basically said, this is a legitimate thing. So, I kind of got a leg up on that. But anyway, so I had been messaging 5 guys, and they had great stories. All of them were convicted. I was going to say all of them were murderers, but, they always say they didn't do it. Although 3 of them did admit to it. That's right. So, nevertheless, they've been locked up for anywhere between, I think it was 10 and 15 years. We didn't get anybody who was just recently because, again, can you really reform your life in like 2 months being locked up? So they were all locked up for a considerable amount of time. Anyway, so deal falls through. Fast forward, after 3.5 years, 4 years of messaging, and we're not talking like the speed of texting where it's, but because it is so limited into the interaction, right? You kind of cram everything you can into a message, you fire it off, you get a response, 3 days later, basically like it was back in the day when you have a pen pal, right? You're waiting by the mailbox for the next letter. And so that's what this is. I send something on a Monday, it gets, tied up in the system because somebody has to read it over there, and then it can go through, and then it's maybe delivered 3 days later, and then the person gets it, and then they send something back, and then it takes 2 or 3 days for me to get it. So it's very slow paced. If you're trying to build an actual romantic relationship with somebody, it's very inconvenient. Like, it's just not. For me, it was kind of like, I get to the office. There's a notification that I've got a message. Okay, I open it, read the few paragraphs that he writes, fire it off, and then I just go about my day, right? I'm not sitting and waiting by the computer for the next message. When I would get the notification, that's so-and-so. So after years of doing this, you do get to know them. Now, you get to know them for what they tell you because, inmates are notorious for, making up stories. And as I just said, oh, I didn't do it. Meanwhile, like, every piece of evidence says you did it, buddy. But I get it because, you've got an appeal coming up and all of this correspondence is monitored. So you can just, stick to that story. But we know you did it. Right, OJ? So, but that's where we were at. So, in January of this year, it's award show season. We had some craziness with our broadcasts and things that we were doing for our company. And there were a bunch of the messages that had come through from the guys because I guess either they had written, like Merry Christmas or Happy New Year, whatever it was. And then I did. And then there was one night, it was before the Screen Actors Guild Award. It was just before the California wildfires because I remember... No, it was the day, I can't, anyway, so it was early to mid-January. And so I fired off a bunch of messages. And the great thing about this, though, is that, you can kind of write sort of the same thing to them. Oh, here, I've got a section about something funny the dogs did. I can just drop it into every one of their messages. So it saves some time. I don't have to retype it all. But of course, they're different people and they're all in different stages of their lives, or if they are appealing or, what's going on. And, somebody in New Jersey is having different weather than Texas. So it's, you can't cut and paste, the entire message. But so one of them in particular was a guy who he at 19 years old had a fight with his friend over a girl, and he killed the friend. Now again, here's the thing: is that allegedly, well, he was convicted of it. The jury saw it. The evidence was overwhelming, so he did it for all intents and purposes. Now we were messaging for, like I said, 3-4 years, and I guess it's kind of like when I've never done the dating app thing or dating profiles, but I imagine like it was with my husband when he was emailing our radio show when I first got to know him, was that the messages kind of got longer and longer, right? So your first one is a couple sentences, hey, how are you, blah, blah. And then as we're comfortable with each other, we're writing paragraphs and paragraphs. And so that was the situation for this guy in Florida. So he was 19 when this happened, and he'd been locked up for, when we first started to communicate, probably about 10 years, I guess, or 8 or 9 years, I guess. So it ran the gamut of conversations, right? From those icebreakers of, hey, I'm in Canada, but I spend my time in West Hollywood too. This is, I'm a radio guy, newspaper guy, write books. I have 2 dogs. I've got a husband. We travel. I cover red carpets. Giving everything, and it's always awkward because their life kind of stopped from the outside world, at 19 years old, right? So I was always kind of, is it going to seem like I'm bragging about my life? Is it going to, is this going to depress the person who doesn't have these opportunities? How much could he have traveled in his life, right? So I don't want to ask those questions of, so where do you like to go? Oh, right, you've pretty much spent your entire life there. So I'll try to avoid that. And once you kind of get that framework, once you've built that rapport, you realize that, you can ask those things and maybe it gives them a bit of hope too. So a couple of them, one guy really did have an explosive sort of tell me to fuck off thing, because I guess my questions, you asked them about themselves, and then he just took it the wrong way and told me to fuck off and just never replied again. But for the guy in Florida, he maintained his innocence all along, and we talked about our family pets, we talked about the holidays, we talked about just everything. And it was really weird because what I found was I was also talking about my business. I was talking about our radio shows. I was talking about our red carpets. I was talking about launching our coffee company app, our lifestyle app that we launched a few months ago. And we were talking about, subscriptions and content strategies. And it's really weird because you're sitting here going, this dude, was locked up at 19 for murdering his friend over a fight with a girl. And he's so eloquent and he's such a good conversationalist and these, messages. So what you find yourself in this situation is I'm looking forward to the next message, and I'm picking and choosing when I reply because I'm going to sit there for an hour writing back because there's either just so much to say because he's responding to what we had discussed, a week ago or whatever it was. And then, I've got new stuff to add since then. And then he's added other things and added questions or whatever it is. So in January, I kind of just did this, message palooza to all of them. And I sent, some pictures of the dogs dressed in, Christmas stuff or whatever it was. And again, just to make them feel, they've got nobody at Christmas, right? So, send them something to make them smile. And so there we go. Of course, my staff was always like, "Oh, does Charles know that you're emailing them at 3 a.m? Yes. Okay. And really, I'm not delusional like that either. But like, first of all, I'm in one country, they're in another. They're never getting out of there. What exactly? I've got a hot, rich, built, tattooed, tan fitness model husband. What am I going to do with Joe Schmo in Florida who's never going to see the light of day again? What really? Anyway, no, it was always very, professional and, some silly at times, of course, because that's just my personality. Anyway, so Florida guy, we're messaging back and forth, and the last message in mid-January was his reply. He had sent 2 emails, and again, it was things like our app. Oh, the inauguration was coming up, so he was talking about that. It's always fascinating as a Canadian to kind of, to hear from an American, and then also they want to know what a Canadian thinks. And we know, if you've been following the news, which I know you have with the tariffs, you know how Canadians feel about Americans right now. Boo, during the sporting events. And so I was kind of like, okay, he had sent 2 emails in mid-January that's right. It was right after the wildfires because he asked about that, and then it was just before the election. So it must have been the inauguration. The inauguration was January 20th, and the fires maybe were January 17th. So yeah, his message came in around 18th, 19th. Now, I did get the notification that I had all these replies, right, from the different people on this platform. I didn't read them. I just hadn't done anything with it because, again, we were in the middle of award show season. We had the fire, breathing down our necks in West Hollywood, and I just never got around to it. So fast forward to Sunday night, I think it was, and Charles, my husband and I were just sitting around the house, and he was kind of bored. He's like, well, let's just. So we found an episode of Dateline, and we were watching Dateline, and that made me think, oh, that's right, I know some murderers, because, Dateline's all about the stabby, shooty stories. So I said, all right, let's watch Dateline. And so as we put that on, I went and grabbed my laptop, and then I logged in, and I got the messages. So like I said, in true fashion, spent about an hour and a half, because what I would do is I would take the message, copy it into Notepad, and then when he'd asked something, I would respond to it. Or if he mentioned something, I would give my 2 cents, and then I would ask him a question or whatever it was. So I spent an hour and a half, and I'm, answering the questions. I started asking him things. It had been, 3-4 months since I had, given him any updates, right? We had a lot to cover. We had the entire award show season. We had, so much going on. We had launched the app as well by that point. And so I was giving all these updates. So I go and the reason why I would dump it into Notepad is because if you're taking too long filling out the form, it logs you out, it kicks you out, and so then you've lost everything that you wrote. So I take it out, I put it in my own program, and then I go. So I do the super long message, literally an hour and a half of typing. I go, I click on the to or to compose, and then I go drop down and look to see the names, and his name isn't there anymore. Now, what happens sometimes is if they are moved to another facility, or sometimes they're just removed from your list of contacts, so you'd have to search them again, and then you add it. So he wasn't in my list, and so I go and I search his name again, and it says user not found, and I was like, how's that not found? Was he moved somewhere then? Somewhere else in Florida. So I Google his name this time, and I see these news stories that he's dead. And I stopped for a second because there was just sort of this weird, numb, warm feeling in my face, and then I just got cold. Now at this point, Dateline was already over. My husband had already gone to bed. So I was still just on the couch by myself, and yeah, it was literally 3 o'clock in the morning. So I search his name, and I see all these news stories from Florida that he's dead. He killed himself. That's what the investigation concluded. And I was stunned. I'm sitting there going, whoa, wow, that's wild. That's just wild because, again, this is somebody who's optimistic. He had a court date coming up in April, I think it was. Something in April and then the beginning of May. There was like a preliminary kind of a thing, and then he had an appeal. He was telling me all about how he was optimistic, he was looking forward to it, how it's kind of stressful, but he's excited because he's got some new information that he's going to present. And I was like, all right, cool, that's great. And I never wanted to be too intrusive. Like I said, if they want to tell me about it, fine, but I'm not going to, he's bringing it up, so it's fair game to ask questions because he's obviously wanting to share, right? So I bring up all these stories and I was just like, oh my God, I cannot believe this. It's ridiculous. I'm getting goosebumps right now as I'm retelling it. And so I was like, okay, well, come to find out he was facing other charges where he was facing perjury and he was it racketeering? I don't remember what. There was just a bunch of things that he had got some informants and they were going to, he was trying to have them lie for him. And it's like, oh, that's a stupid move to do. You're already locked up. Why now you're going to go and lie? You're just going to fuck yourself over. Not a good move. So I guess he was facing other charges. And then he had a court date about that. Not about his potential appeal or whatever. It was a court date about that because he got busted. And allegedly, do I have to say allegedly? He's dead now, so I don't know that you have to do that anymore. He's not going to sue me. And I haven't said his name, so you don't know who I'm talking about. But it was just, like, I could not believe it. I thought, wow. So then I start going through all these different, I'm going to use the word emotions because it's a human being, and I'm a human being. And this is somebody who, like I said, when I say it's literally paragraphs, like if we were to, I would have to dump them into a Word document and see, but like one message might span 2 or 3 pages in a Word document. And again, when you multiply that by how many times per year, there's been a lot of messaging going back and forth. So you do feel like you know the person. I was just like, I can't believe this. Like, I almost want to, I'm feeling guilty because it's like, well, what if I would have replied to him in February or at the beginning of March or middle of March before the, or when he got busted, maybe I could have chatted him through it. Or maybe, there's all these kinds of things. Like I'm almost feeling guilt. Meanwhile, here I am I'm in Los Angeles now, but at the time I was, going back and forth to Canada and, busy with my life. And it was very strange because I'm sitting here going, oh my God, I felt like a friend had committed suicide, right? Is that bizarre to feel that way? Is it strange? And I come into the office, like I said, this was a Sunday night. So I come in for Monday and we have our group meeting with everybody. And I said to my team in Canada, I said, can you believe he's dead? Like and I sent a screenshot from one of the messages where he said he's got this at the, in April and then a thing in May and that he was optimistic about it. And then I sent a link to the stories, to one of the news stories. And they were just like, wow, that's crazy. Like, I went through a bit of sadness for, a day or two. And I sit here going, I've never had somebody that's directly connected to me that's committed suicide. Now, my cousin, she had married, I'm not super close with the cousin, but she had married a guy and they were married for, was it 8 years, I think, maybe? Here's the thing. I wouldn't have even, I know her name, obviously, she's my cousin. If you gave me a list of names, I could probably pick out what his name was. But if I were to pass him in the mall, I would not know who he was. He would recognize me, sure, because I, locally I'm in the newspaper and whatever it is. But like if he would stop me in the mall, hey, Jeremy, I'd be like, I don't know who you are. So that's how, close I was with this guy. Well, he killed himself a few years ago. We were in Nashville. We were taping our final radio shows, and I was just about to get on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry. We were just about to tape the last episode, and my mom had texted, I'm just about to walk on, literally walking up to the stage, and she said, so-and-so's husband died, and then she'd sent a group text to my brothers and me. And I was like, okay, here I'm just finding out about a suicide, and I'm literally going on the air in a few minutes to tape this radio show. So that's the closest I've come to suicide. Not closest I've come, closest that I've come to experiencing somebody's suicide. I'm not suicidal. Let's not go there. So it was a little bit, it's kind of like, all right, well, my cousin is mourning and grieving. I understand that. I appreciate that. She's family, even though I really don't know much about her. that's still her husband, and that's, it's tough. So with this, I'm like, this is somebody who I actually know that did it, right? Like it sort of takes you that one step further, kind of like a cancer thing, right? Until you either know somebody who's died from breast cancer or whatever cancer, or you have cancer or whatever it is, it takes on a new meaning when it actually hits you personally. And it's somebody in your world, right? In your circle of friends or family, whoever it is. So with this, I'd never met the guy face to face. I never, had even a phone call. Or no, I don't ever had a phone call with him. But we just had these really long messages where, I'm not saying that I knew everything about him, but, you could ask me a lot about whether it's his family or, whatever. And I probably knew the answer to those things. And so I was just, I go through that Monday after telling everybody, and I was really like, wow. And then at night, my husband and I, we'd walked the dog, or we'd eaten, we had walked the dogs, and then it was again, just kind of TV time. And I thought, I kind of want to message the other guys just to make sure they're alive. I mean, I'm not making a joke, right? Like it's kind of, I should do a head count of like, who's still, because, and yeah. So, fast forward though, I think about it and go, well, wait a second. This guy he wasn't necessarily directly lying to me about his appeal, but he just said that, he said, I've got a good case. I've got, new evidence. I didn't poke and prod. That was, again, if he wants to share that with me, great. But I didn't know what it was. So I can't say that he was exactly lying to me about that, right? It's not like he went and said, oh, well, I've got this guy who da-da-da-da-da-da-da. If he were lying to me, then I would feel like, okay, well, fuck you, you liar, and good riddance. I'm an asshole like that. I am. It's kind of, you're dead to me at that point. Literally, I guess now, not to be crass, but, so it's not like he was lying to me. Whether he was telling me the truth about things, it's kind of hard because, like I said, we're discussing things like, content strategies and business and all that other stuff. Like, we weren't talking about the case. We weren't talking about things like that. So, like, why would you lie? Right? Like, what does he have to prove? He's already the murderer that people have seen on TV. I mean, it's not like he's got, he's going to save face with some random stranger, right? And so I was kind of torn. I was like, well, should I, if he's taking advantage of, the court system and he's lying about things and he's trying to, swindle his way out of jail and that, well, maybe he's not such a great guy after all. So I kind of did. I had this mourning or grieving period, as it were. And then I kind of went through that where I was like, well, maybe still kind of a slime bucket if he's trying to do that. And then that's where you also sort of connect these dots and go, well, if he wasn't, doing this stuff, right, these lies and whatever, then why did he kill himself? Now, I realize, yes, there's mental health issues and there's, could have been whatever, right? Maybe he realized, well, I just can't, you've heard people are wrongly convicted or whatever it was. Well, maybe he felt, well, they were wrong about this, but now I'm cooked because I'm never going to get out now after this. And that was his way out. I don't know, So I was tempted. It happened, it's not like it just happened yesterday. It was a while back now already, right? It was in the spring. I was tempted to either, find his relatives or, his family on Facebook or something and just kind of go, but it, like I said, it was so long ago, it's going to seem strange. And I mean, what am I going to do? Hi. 2-3 months ago, I found out that your brother killed himself, and I just wanted to tell you that, I was messaging with him, and so what happened, right? I mean, so I didn't, it's indelicate to do something like that. But it was a very, very strange situation for me because, to hear, it's one thing when you hear about, a celebrity death, right? Because you know who the person is. You've never had a conversation with them. But for some strange reason, the general public kind of feels a connection to a celebrity. Well, this is somebody that, you've had interactions with, never met in person. But, in this instance, you feel like you do have a connection and you know them. So, yeah, I felt like, wow, this is the first time that suicide has, in an indirect way, touched my life. And it's a bitch because you do. I talked with our producer Bonnie Winters, and I said, what if I had messaged him, on January 21st or even March, whatever it was, the day before, maybe. And again, there was nothing stopping him from sending a message. Hey, are you still around? What's going on? But it wasn't one of those relationships, right? It wasn't like I haven't heard from you. What's going on? Are you mad at me? No. Now, that would be a very odd relationship, and that would have been something I would have done in my 20s when I was totally insecure and single and like wanting attention from men. But no, I'm in my 40s now. I am beyond. I am not chasing after a guy. Sorry. Even if he's locked up, that's the easiest one you can land. You can't go anywhere. Anyway, so tell me your thoughts. First of all, there's a few different discussion topics here. What are your thoughts about carrying on a conversation or even a relationship with somebody who's locked up and never going to get out? Never getting out unless he breaks out, but then you're on the run with a felon. And then secondly, having, somebody's suicide like that, would you be impacted? Would you be affected by that? So send me an email, live@jbonair.com, live@jbonair.com. I've blown right past this segment is already 31 minutes. And so I know that's longer than our show runs because our show is 30 minutes. I'm going to take a break. All right. So we're going to do some break time action here on the Scribble, and I will be back, and we'll see what's going to happen when we come back.
It's never too early to start thinking about your next holiday. Have you checked out Mexico recently? From tequila tasting, swimming with horses, to ziplining through the jungle and watching whales and dolphins in their natural habitat, Puerto Vallarta has it all. Visit mexico.jbonair.com to see all the fun PV has to offer. That's at mexico.jbonair.com for hundreds of photos, interviews, and videos from around the tourist hotspot. Check out mexico.jbonair.com for all the fun. That's mexico.jbonair.com.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com.
JB here on The Scribble. Yes, we are out of time. We are well over the 30-minute mark, and I knew that. At the top of the show, I said that this is going to be the entire episode. But because it's such a big issue, and I just posed those questions of, carrying on a relationship with somebody or, meeting, I want to hear from you, and I'm going to incorporate some of your responses. I hope we can have some back and forth emails, just like You're a Prisoner, and when I'll share that on the show next week. So again, the email address is live, L-I-V-E, at jbonair.com, live at jbonair.com, and let's have some back and forth because, I didn't expect going into that project that we were going to do. I didn't expect to carry, trust me, I've done interviews and, produced shows for how many years? It's a one and done kind of a thing. When we'd have an artist or, an author, whoever it was, it's like, I pretend to care about your project for that couple minutes and then I'm done. I forget your name by next week. Well, this was a different situation for me. So again, live, L-I-V-E at jbonair.com. We'll continue this discussion next week on The Scribble. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye for now.
Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a Speak Free media presentation.
If you want some real